And thank you, everyone, and welcome back. Being being part of a second panel is usually tough because everyone wants a longer break. But it's good to see and good to have everyone back here. We are going to be really looking at. We are taking the conversation one step further now, and really looking at AI disruption in media, especially focusing on not just the opportunities, but really also understanding the threats and what we must gear ourselves up for, and how can we actually prepare ourselves for this phenomena that, as what Ashwad said, we have to live with, right? It's not going away, but we need to adapt and we need to figure out how we're going to own these spaces as well. We've got a whole list of esteemed speakers who actually really doesn't need further introduction. You know who they are, right? We've got Ashwad Ismail, of course. We've got Professor Zaharum Naim, and of course, Inche Azim Abu Bakr, Managing Director of FMT. We also have with us online Mr. Oliver Amoroso, who's from GMA Integrated News, who's unfortunately not able to be with us today. And he's going to share a video recording. Yeah. We want to locate this afternoon, is it afternoon? The discussion now, a second part of the morning, within the broad ecosystem of not just creating journalistic content, but really the role of journalism, news content, as well as how it impacts our information ecosystem. So we heard this morning about how a lot of use of AR is still concentrated within the workflow around creating the content, editing the content. But there is, of course, the largest spaces that we are looking at, how these content is subsequently marketed. How are we looking at content curation? How are we looking at making sure that we've got the right news feed so that the right audience for this. So this means it's got a larger implication because media is, of course, as per the norm, directing the narrative, as we say, right? You're setting the picture. As what Munira asked earlier, in the context of Malaysia, then you are occupying the spaces of determining public perception. So how does that AI intersect with the space, right? So we'll start actually with a very, very short recording from Mr. Amoroso so that we get a perspective from our neighbors, Philippines, and then we'll come back to Malaysia, our context, and how we are navigating the space. Thank you.
Magandang araw from the Philippines. Thank you to Shafizan Johari of Astro AWANI for inviting me to join you today and for asking me to share our thoughts on the topic that has made headlines in industry discussions. This actually started in a conversation we had with Astro AWANI's Editor-in-Chief, Ashwad Ismail, during the YouTube News Summit in Singapore. Maya and Marco made headlines when they were launched in September 2023.
Hey, it's your girl Maya.
What's up, guys? I'm Marco.
We're your Kapuso AI sportscasters.
They are AI-generated sports presenters created for Season 99 of the National Collegiate Athletics Association, or NCAA. The pioneering collegiate sports league in the Philippines aired on GTV, a free-to-air channel of GMA Network. We wanted to test the technology, and we wanted to introduce something new and interesting to our online viewers in our sports coverage. The role of Maya and Marco was to bring creativity and to complement the work of our sports journalists, courtside reporters, and analysts by sharing trivia and updates about the games on social media. Behind Maya and Marco are a team of human sports writers and producers. Their debut kick-started the discussion and its pros and cons. Many questioned how Maya and Marco's presence would affect the media landscape and speculated the AI sports presenters may eventually replace human journalists. On the other hand, debut prompted news organizations to explore how AI can be integrated into work processes and how policies may be revised to include the use of AI. Even schools and universities found themselves highly interested in artificial intelligence.
Which event
In GMA Network, we experimented on Maya and Marco because we recognized the emergence of generative AI and saw its potential to help promote the NCAA. As of today, Maya and Marco AI Sports Series or NCAA has generated over 25 million views. During the 2023 FIBA World Cup in the Philippines, generative AI was used to produce digital tour guides that assisted attendees within the venue. Meanwhile, GMA network anchors and reporters became victims of deepfakes, something that we called out in a news report on our flagship news program, 24 Horas. To protect our brand and values as a news organization, we felt a wider conversation had to be in order. We brought together members of GMA Integrated News to an internal masterclass where we invited tech experts, journalists who dabbled with AI, specifically Astro AWANI, and the team responsible for Maya and Marco. There, we discussed the ethical considerations or safety measures that must be observed when using AI and the specific tools that can help streamline the news production process. We also created a network-wide committee composed of representatives from different groups and departments to study the technology further and to come up with guidelines we can use in the network. We believe that should we use AI, there are two questions we need to ask and answer. What problem is it solving? Will it do any harm? Here are some of the guidelines we observe today. Prior to use, any AI tool must be subject to due diligence, cleared after a technical review and approved by a designated authority. GMAIN's Digital Lab has tested 10 AI tools that they found to have the potential to streamline or improve its operations. Human judgment shall remain the final arbiter of all content that is aired and shared by GMA integrated news platforms with the public. Any AI-generated content shall be subjected to a process of oversight and editing. AI may be used to aid in the production of publishable content as long as these are reviewed and approved by human editors. The AI Sportscasters project, for example, involved around 20 to 30 people who operated behind the scenes, researching materials, writing and editing the scripts, producing the graphics, editing and previewing the final product, and overseeing the entire operations before releasing the episodes on social media. As much as possible, safety layers shall be used in AI deployment to ensure that bad data is flagged or filtered, so these are not accidentally included in any published content. Examples of bad data would be profanity, hate speech, and mis- and disinformation. Any content produced by AI should be declared as such, produced by AI or with the assistance of AI to GMAIN gatekeepers and or officers. Any information or ideas obtained through AI tools or services that were used in producing content should likewise be declared. Indicate which parts of our report content were assisted or generated by AI. Specify the AI tool used. Our in-video project, which we produced for the Holy Week, was labeled appropriately as produced with the help of AI. That project involved GMA Integrated News social media team, editing, proofreading, and reviewing the scripts and videos, and supervising the operations before release. Personnel must be careful not to share sensitive and confidential company information that can be scraped and used by AI tools. We are urged to educate ourselves and stay updated on advances in technology and the issues that emerge as a result. A company shall work with employees and talents to upgrade their skills to make them more adaptable to the demands of new technology. As such, these guidelines shall be periodically updated. We are committed to exploring AI's full potential while avoiding harm. Just this April, we have sent 2 of our colleagues to Malaysia for the Digital Media Asia 2024 conference, during which they learned to explore the use of AI in GMA. 1, utilizing AI-generated articles based on statistics to supplement traditional reporting and provide in-depth analysis on complex topics. 2, implementing AI summaries to streamline the editing process and condense lengthy articles into easily digestible formats. 3. Leveraging AI-generated headlines to identify the most compelling angles for news stories and increased reader interest. 4. Incorporating AI analysis in election coverage to ensure fair and balanced treatment of candidates. AI can be used to count how many times a candidate has been reported compared with others over a period of time. And fact-checking. During our internal masterclass, we assured our team that no job will be sacrificed because of AI and that our people remain our most valuable assets. Again, there's no substitute to human decisions. Recognizing the influence we have on our viewers and followers as a media and news organization, we and GMA will continue to take part in conversations about AI even beyond our own borders. Last September, for example, our journalists engaged with students and stakeholders in Cebu City and Southern Philippines in a discussion on AI during the Cebu Press Freedom Week. That discussion, which centered on journalism in the age of artificial intelligence, aimed to help students, especially those in communication and journalism, be conscious of the way they may use AI in sifting through data in details, in news gathering and reporting. Our journalists urge students to be wary of its risk to maintain credibility in conveying the news. With our internal guidelines in GMA Network, we'll continue to protect our platforms as a small contribution to protecting those who continue to believe in our brand and consume our content. AI is a tool and must be treated as such. And while fears persist of its potential to take over our industries, even humanity, seeing it fail in this regard might just be the biggest headline we will see in our time. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you today. Feel free to email us at synergy@gmanetwork.com should you have any questions. Again, maraming salamat po.
I think Mr. Amoroso definitely brought up some very, very critical points. I think mainly the importance of some ethical considerations, especially transparency and disclosure. I think is really, really critical. He also talked about how it's not just about supplementing, how we come up with news or reporting processes, but also other initiatives around fact-checking and so on. Right? And before we move on to our other speakers, I think I'm hoping that the audience here could, think of certain areas or issues that you are also very keen on, especially with regards to what do you expect media when it comes to regulating itself around use of AI? What do you think should be the role of the state in terms of a broader governance and regulation aspects? But most importantly, as readers, consumers, or people, what is it we think is critical in ensuring that our human rights are guaranteed when newsrooms start embarking on these innovative tools? Right? What are our demands? I think let's keep that in our mind as we hear from our next speakers, because Ashwad is going to take us into, locating it back to Malaysia in terms of our trends here.
Right. I think overall, it's good to have that as a start. It's good to address and acknowledge the threat and the risk surround this particular topic of AI, in which number one, from the transactional perspective, as a journalist, as editors or content creators per se, the opportunities are huge. They're going to help us in terms of, not just about the efficiency of the operations, but also the business behind it, in which, keeping certain OPEX low, but also at the same time address this in terms of safeguarding the whole journalistic processes. And where are we today in Malaysia? I guess everyone is talking about, now AI, right? But basically, in reality, I think good to have this kind of conversation so that we are still at the very early stage of not just about adoption and adaptation of AI, but also understanding everything under the sky in this realm of technology, and how does this intertwine with our day-to-day business and also livelihood. And above all, I guess it's best for us to address this in a manner where it's here to stay, and these are the challenges, these are the risks. At the same time, there's also opportunities. So to set the tone right for especially the conversation among the Global South, where we don't really own or originate the technology, then at the global scale, some sort of understanding has been formed. There must be a red line that cannot be crossed. What does that mean? So the question here, it has to be regulated. Everyone agrees across all industry players, leaders, governments, the states. Question here about the red dot itself, whether the red dot that cannot be crossed or the red line that cannot be crossed has to be 50 kilometers away from here, or either it has to be 2 kilometers away from here. For those who create the technology, this is the best part about creator. You want bigger, wider space. But for those who consume or continue to consume and to buy those technology, of course, we are very anxious about with certain areas that needs to be safeguarded. That's the bigger conversation about that. But I think to start, or at least to start the ball rolling, this kind of conversation happens so that we can actually close the gaps in terms of understanding, and how does this going to apply, and how does this going to help us to pivot and help to enhance certain skills within the talent. And we don't want the next generation of journalists, for example, in this room, the students or the future journalists today are not going to be able to work as journalists anymore. Are not going to be able to be hired as journalists anymore. And, well, Azim is not going to hire a journalist, meaning, well, the future is bleak. So we don't want that. And, of course, we want to partner with the rest of you. So start to apply. I think best for students to take this opportunity to see this as a moment of you can actually build and open your own media company with the help of AI, but with the right guidelines. And of course, most important is transparency, integrity of the integrity of information, and it's a sustainable business, equitable at the same time, and transparent. I think this moment that we need to set the tone, because it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all after all. We are at the early stage, not really early, especially on generative artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ashwad. I think we will circle back to you, because I think we need to explore a little bit more when you talk about safeguards. Where are actually the gaps, aside from talking about journalistic principles and ethics, but there are several other areas I think perhaps we should have a conversation about as well. We'll come back to you that, but maybe we'll have Professor Zaharul, just giving us a snapshot of where we are at in terms of the ethical considerations and governance issues when it comes to use of AI in newsrooms.
Yeah, before I do that, some context, a caveat perhaps, and a confession. I'm an academic. I'm not one of these media stars here, so I'm one of the professionals. I'm used to standing behind a rostrum, having my notes with me, speaking to students, and also addressing conferences. That rostrum being my kind of, safety net, as it were. So today, this is a kind of strange kind of environment for me in that kind of sense. So I'll try to do my best, but you'll have to bear with me, because I'll be looking through my notes as well, right? So, because I'm an academic. Oftentimes, my friends, my students, my enemies especially, say I'm a Luddite, that I detest technology, opposed to new technologies, which I'm not. I'm basically someone who's skeptical and cautious of the claims being made about the benefits of new technology and its ability and promise to transform or revolutionize society. as if it was some magic wand, yeah, that can easily and invariably change our lives for the better. So my approach to the AI themes being discussed today is a cautious one, a skeptical one, looking at technology within the structures, especially power structures and inequalities in and between societies. I make no apologies for taking this approach because I believe that unfortunately the utopias being advanced by those who design, develop, and market these technologies just do not exist for many on this planet, and will not do so for a long, long time if you don't critically examine contemporary societies and address and overcome the inequalities that have been created and perpetuated by those in power, primarily states, transnationals, and what has often been termed the military-industrial complex. So I'll provide some kind of background to all this optimism, as it were. Every time there is technological development and change, we hear futurists like Alvin Toffler, for example, some decades back, waxing lyrical about the benefits for all of us. Even before that, influential American communications scholars like Wilbur Schramm, Daniel Lerner, and Everett Rogers, after the Second World War, were essentially very excited about the development of what was seen as the third world societies and how technology, radio and television in this kind of case, could essentially help them develop faster. And these so-called third world countries were essentially newly independent former British, French, Dutch colonies, and the technology was seen as revolutionary, capable of transforming the societies. One infotech scholar, Ithiel de Solapool at MIT, for example, even came up with a book called Technologies of Freedom in 1983. The main problem with these optimistic views is that they generally assume a uniformity in many societies that just doesn't exist. Just yesterday, for example, UNICEF's Living on the Age longitudinal study was widely reported, a study on Kuala Lumpur's low-income households, widely reported, telling us about the existence and persistence of multi-dimensional poverty after the COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia's capital city, where, among other figures, 1 child in 2 eats less than 3 meals a day. The access these groups have to any emergent or new technology, indeed AI, is just not equal. In many cases, all around the world, such access is non-existent. Global figures, for example, show that currently 719 million people, that is 9.2% of the world's population, are living on less than $2.15 American a day. 24% of the world's population, which equates to 1.9 billion people, live in fragile contexts characterized by impoverished conditions and dire circumstances. These figures remind us of the ongoing inequalities that exist side by side with the developments and possible excitement we currently experience with AI. But of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that we should dismiss AI as another fad and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Such inequalities, I believe, should enjoin us to go beyond the many party tricks, parlor games, and technical advantages that AI could and would likely provide us as journalists and academics to a wider level of concerns. In this regard, a number of initiatives, aside from AWANI's admirable effort outlined earlier, have been and are being developed with an eye to providing ethical guidelines for AI. The UNESCO draft guideline, Ethics of Artificial Intelligence, which was issued in 2021, recognizes, and I quote, the potential AI systems have to embed biases, contribute to culture, climate degradation, threaten human rights, and more. Such risks associated with AI, the guideline continues, have already begun to compound on top of existing inequalities, resulting in further harm to already marginalized groups. UNESCO's guideline typically and unsurprisingly contains 4 core values: respecting human rights and dignity, ensuring diversity and inclusiveness, having peaceful and interconnected societies, and ensuring a flourishing environment and ecosystem. All very humane and progressive, as UNESCO recommendations tend to be. Not to be outdone, the EU is coming up as early as this May, following final approvals from some EU member states, with its AI Act. On the basis of this act, and I quote, a complete set of regulations, including rules governing chatbots, will be in effect by mid-2026, according to the European Parliament, which noted each EU country will establish its own AI watchdog agency. Independently, on 10 November 2023, last year, RSF and 16 largely civil society organizations that defend journalism and the media came up with the Paris Charter on AI and journalism. To summarize, the Charter defines ethics and principles that journalists, newsrooms, and media outlets around the world will be able to appropriate and apply in their work with artificial intelligence. It was created by a commission initiated by Reporters Without Borders or Frontiers and chaired by journalist and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Ressa. All these initiatives, from the very detailed and elaborate UNESCO Global Standard on AI ethics to the proposed EU law on AI and to the most recent Paris Charter, suggest strongly that the necessary framework and general safeguards are already in place to be applied globally. As the UNESCO document stresses, its recommendation is exceptionally applicable because of its extensive policy action areas, which allow policymakers to translate the core values and principles into action with respect to data governance, environment and ecosystems, gender, education and research, and health and social well-being, among many other spheres. Having all these good intentions, policy recommendations, laws, even a charter, is great on paper, making everything so neat, with all things falling into place, like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Flea-bitten journalists and academics in response, like us, I guess, in response will tell us, however, that such optimism notwithstanding, the implementation of the guidelines, the enforcement of the laws, my last speech, and the honoring of the Charter is fraught with difficulties. In the context of this green and pleasant land of ours, political leadership, political will, and political priorities play crucial roles affecting implementation and enforcement. Just as Howard Zinn was right when he wrote, "You can't be neutral on a moving train" in 1994, so must we realize in the context of a country lacking good governance and reeking of corruption within an unethical environment, that it's not going to be easy being ethical in a largely unethical world or country. This is not to say it cannot be done. And we, especially journalists and academics in this context, should make the effort, as AWANI clearly is doing, to develop an ethical environment and ethical practices. To end, as I started, with words of caution, however, we need to be aware that a neoliberal environment, a political system that advances division and discord, and a largely placid and tidak apa fraternity of journalists and academics will make our efforts and our challenges, and the challenges we face, that much harder.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. I think really appreciate you taking us back to the context that we can have all the standards out there, but it requires some level of investment in terms of how we want to see this through in a very ethical manner. Right. A lot of points that you raised, I think, also resonated with what Ashwad mentioned around, uniformity need not necessarily be the best way to go forward. There are inherent biases when it comes to innovation and AI tools. We'll come back to that as well. I think now we move on to, a space where, journalism is already experiencing some kind of existential crisis, I think. We are talking about sustainability, viability. and then we throw in this new technology and innovation, to muddy the waters a little bit more. But Azim's going to take us to the reality. What are the economics of AI in newsroom? What are the cost-benefit analysis here and the implication for us as we move forward?
Right. Thank you, moderator. I would like to start off by asking who in this room are journalists, or studying for journalists, or teaching journalism, or how many? Quite a number, right? And before I begin, I want to make it very clear that my position, of course, FMP's position, and of course our position is we want to make journalism thrive. Why? Because it is important for our nation, for democracy. And whatever we do and whatever we discuss must be geared towards that. Reason why I say this is because my presentation has some elements that to me is quite scary. Okay, and I would like to begin by this movie Oppenheimer. Anybody here watch Oppenheimer? Yeah. Watch Oppenheimer? Right, some have watched it, but for the benefit for those who didn't, so Oppenheimer basically designed the atomic bomb, and before he built the atomic bomb, he went to see Einstein, and he gave Einstein a piece of paper about his formula of chain reaction. And what he wanted to know was whether Einstein would verify that formula to be correct. Because if it's correct, that means to build an atomic bomb was possible, right? So he went to see Einstein, and he gave that note, and Einstein looked at it, and then he crumpled it, and he gave it back. And then he walked away. There was the fear in Einstein's face that this thing could happen, right? And from that point onwards, Oppenheimer knew that it's possible. So he built the atomic bomb, and decades later, we have the hydrogen bomb. So atomic bomb can blow up Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Now a hydrogen bomb can blow up 1,000 of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, right? So you can see how technology has advanced the atomic bomb into hydrogen bomb, and now, God knows how big of a destruction it can cause. Now, why I'm talking about that, why I raise that, is because, okay, we hold that thought for a while, right? Up on the screen, I put the word evolve. In order to make sure journalism thrives, we have to evolve. Now, what I'm going to show you in next slide, I think will give everybody a big picture about the economics of journalism. Because what pays for journalism is actually advertising, right? And what you see here is actually a pie chart of the entire revenue for ads, for online digital media. It doesn't include TV. So the market has about 5 billion. 88% is controlled by Google, Meta, and TikTok. Only 12%, about 300 million, goes to media companies like us, and that includes the social media influencers. There are hundreds of thousands, not millions of people, I would say in Malaysia, probably thousands of players just competing for this small chunk that's left, right? So this has been getting smaller over the past 10 years, and with AI, we believe that it'll get smaller. And this compression of revenue will affect journalists. It will affect the industry. And that has given a lot of pressure to people like us in management on how do we keep the companies afloat? How do we make sure it thrives? How do we make sure it's sustainable? Just a bit of background. My role as MD of FMT is more on the business side. I don't really get involved in editorial, but I only get involved when it comes to client content. But my job is is on the economic side of things. And I have the privilege of being able to access this kind of information to give you a big picture. Right now, when AI came about, right, this is how it's going to affect the newsroom, right? So this is the typical flow of how the newsroom would work, at least in FMT. So reporter gets the news, pass its article to the editor, the sub-editor checks, and then the article is being produced. And after the article is being produced, we send it to the scripter, who will then produce a video. From the article, we can also do infographics, and they will post it on social media, right? So all of this content, video, graphics, or article will be posted on the website, on social media over the site. Okay? When AI came, okay, what happened was when AK contacted me for this particular talk, it was a few hours after me and my IT team made a huge discovery. Okay? I'll bring back the Oppenheimer moment. So what happened was that, I won't say I'm Einstein, but my role was like the Einstein. I'm opposite of Einstein. But my guy was like Oppenheimer. He gave me a piece of note, right? It's a formula and a framework in which he has started to design that can replace the entire thing. The entire thing. From here to here to here, everything. And I give you an example, right? How do we get stories? There are now Google Trends and social media that produce stories. Okay, his crawler can crawl those news and then produce an article to be sent to the editor. Of course, ChatGPT can sort of edit it, send it to the sub-editor, and then ChatGPT can check the grammar, and then ChatGPT produce the article, ChatGPT produce the script, ChatGPT produce the graphic. As you know, ChatGPT 4 can generate graphics now.
Sora.
Sora can generate the video, and then using Hootsuite, you can automate the publishing of the whole thing. Okay, in the supply chain, how many people involved? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 in one particular story, right? With this software that he's building, he can replace 9 people. We probably need 1 or 2 just to make sure the flow is correct and verify the information, right? So when I look at it, I said, you know what? I cannot reveal this. Actually, this group is the first group I actually revealed, this discovery. And of course, there's been past discussion, up till now that AI isn't perfect and it cannot replace journalists. I totally agree. But I think it can replace a large part of it, large part of the process. That's one. Secondly, what we have been talking up till this very moment has been what's going on with AI today. According to Elon Musk, AI will be smarter than human beings by the end of next year. Actually, AI is already smarter than most human beings by now. Imagine next year what else it could turn out to be. And technology advances, right? And you look at how the atomic bomb eventually evolved into hydrogen bomb. It always gets better, right? But of course, journalism will still be needed to get the stories. But what is worrying is, although internally, even if FMT or AWANI can build this, what's stopping the big tech companies from doing it? With the kind of resources, they control 88% of the revenue. They can do this like that, right? I mean, they have more resources, more programmers. I have my IT guys is less than 3. So yeah, so this is what's coming, right? Now, because revenue share is getting smaller, right-sizing media company is inevitable. That's why you see, in the news, media companies are somewhat struggling, right? The profit is dwindling because of these things. So those who fail to transform will shut down and market will consolidate. What we mean by consolidation, some brands will have to come together, be a part of the larger group, that kind of thing. But the world will always need news done by editorial teams because the integrity of information is paramount to ensure that we get the right information for the sake of our democracy. But we foresee that at this rate, only a handful of media companies per country will thrive in the long run, or at least survive. Now, I'll give you another perspective, why we say we have to evolve. Nowadays, one-person influencers can have more reach than a big media company. This is Mira Filzah. She has 7.3 million followers. There's CNA, there's Al Jazeera. CNA has 746 followers, 1,000 followers. Al Jazeera has 4.6. You combine these two, you can't match her yet, right? And what kind of cost structure does Mira Filzah has in comparison to these two big companies? I think CNA, I see Radia here, probably she can advise how much CNA spend per year. I think it's in the billions. Al Jazeera will be in the billions. Mira Filzah, what? Not 0.001% of that. But, brands would probably go to her because she has more reach at a small fraction of the cost, right? So we are looking at this kind of a landscape. Why I bring this is because at the end of the day, what's paying for the salaries, revenue from the ads, right? And this is the kind of dynamics that we are looking at. And why I bring this also, because then media companies are faced with the pressure of finding alternatives to how we can optimize cost better, right? And AI actually provides some, well, I'll say big solution to that. So for a media company to be financially sustainable, they must run on a lean cost structure, right? A news company can actually run on a 5 to 10 people, I think 5 years from now, if they wanted to. If they want to make so much profit, they can run on 5 to 10 people if they wanted to, right? They can have 5 to maybe 7 or 8 really, really good journalists that can, do stories that are mind-blowing, that AI can't replicate. And then they will have a pretty good, decent, I would say, margin. But what kind of journalism will survive, right? We talk about what will survive would be those with compelling storytelling. Explainers, or the stories that can shape public opinion, rich lifestyle content that can build brands, not vanilla. So if a journalist is vanilla, it will be very difficult, right? You got to be sophisticated. And I just give you this particular word, influence. Now, media company may have issues with trying to make super profits, but what media company can do is to capitalize on its influence, right? Unlike a traditional business outfit or any kind of business outfit where you sell aircons, right? They can only sell aircons and try to make profit from selling aircons. But media companies, with the influence, it can build companies. It can grow a valuation of another company, although they don't make so much money themselves, right? Or they can shape or save companies from bankruptcy. Now, I'll give you an example, right? So FMT was met with the E&E sector. There's a company that builds microchips, came to us saying that, oh, you know what, I don't have enough workers in my plant because of COVID, and the government had a labor law that is too stringent, that they could not get enough workers. It was so bad that even their executives on the production line, marketing executive, legal in-house counsel, have to work on the production line. And we took up the case, and then I wanted to give them a voice to say that the labour crisis is pushing Malaysia's billion ringgit in sector to breaking point, okay? And we even highlighted that executives on the production line is a wake-up call, says ex-minister. It was Datuk Seri Johari Ghani that time. So we brought in Datuk Seri Jo, the first ministerial level person to advocate about this particular this policy. We brought in issue of labour shortage on the textile industry, the automotive, palm oil. And when we touched on palm oil, we could interview Zuraida, right? So our journalist got Zuraida to comment. She was the Ministry of Commodity at the time. And then Guan Eng, we got Guan Eng to comment as well. Suspend yourself for 2 weeks. Guan Eng tell Saravanan, who's the Minister of Human Resource. Then when he attacked Saravanan, Saravanan then said Saravanan blames Kula for foreign worker shortage. Kula is his predecessor, so he attacked his predecessor. Then when Kula got attacked, then Kula attacked back. Systemic rot of worker recruitment started during BN's rule, says Kula, right? So they were like, shooting at each other. Then again, we brought in Guan Eng, wake up and deal with labour shortage. Guan Eng tells Saravanan, and put up the heat. And the nail in the coffin was when Chief Minister Sao said, labour crunch threatens Penang status as Silicon Valley of the East. When this thing came out, the cabinet, convened and said, we got to resolve this. And Saravanan was given 2 weeks to settle this. And within 2 weeks, he relaxed the labour laws, and the workers were able to come in. And the company which we dealt with managed to get all the workers they need. They managed to save their plant, which is worth billions, and the industry was saved. So we're talking about billion-dollar industry being saved by the things that we do here, right? And this is something which AI can't do, I don't think, not yet or anytime soon, where we have our journalists being able to connect the dots really fast, bring in the relevant people to advocate for a policy which eventually save the entire industry, right? I'm not saying, FMT, we don't make that much of money, but to be able to, save $1 billion sector, that is what counts. And that shows the power of media and its influence. And that is where, journalists who does this kind of thing will have a bright future. The next thing is media for equity model. As I said, journalists who can build brands or build businesses, that would enable us to do this kind of model called media for equity, where a media would actually take shares into a company and provide media coverage, for example, the media inventory to promote those companies. Times of India did use this model, and they have about 850 companies since 2005, amassing about 2 billion worth of portfolio companies, right? So yeah, as a company, they may not make that much of cash, but because they can help build businesses, they have a portfolio of 2 billion. And FMT is doing something like that. So we have our accelerator program, and we take a stake in companies. And journalists who can help us do things like this and making it possible for us to grow the valuation in this way will also have a future. Reason why I bring this too is because we believe that it is in these areas that AI can't really touch you, right? And this is how media companies need to evolve so that we can ensure that the company runs and be able to fund our journalists and our journalism. Okay. So just to recap, revenue share for media industry is shrinking now at around 12% for the online world. It will shrink further because of the big tech companies. And AI is accelerating the downsizing of media companies actually. But only the best with the most cost-effective structure will do well. So journalists must be more sophisticated and be able to influence, whether it's shaping policies, shaping public opinion, and of course, building brands. Of course, we have to do this responsibly. Having this kind of influence, we got to make sure that we don't abuse it. And finally, media companies will have to revolutionize its business model. Look at media for equity and things that are outside of the box, because we have to do this in order to ensure that our journalists can thrive and we can preserve the journalism industry for the sake of the nation and for the sake of our democracy. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, really, really informative, and I'm already picking up certain points here. I think what's really critical for us is to really understand that as innovation come into play, it's not just about people losing job opportunities, but it's also about creating new opportunities and creating new, new fields, new professions, and how do we also leverage that into conversations when it comes to the media industry as well. But I think I want to now use this space and opportunity to take this conversation further. What next, right? And what next we've not talked about much today is what is really the impact on the public, right? We're talking, we've heard about the impact on media. We clearly understand that now, but really the impact on the people, the consumers. How are we having to deal with the fact that media or news that we know of is no longer the same, right? We have to be faced with synthetic content, right? We have to face with the fact that certain news is being channeled my way purely because, algorithm has worked around what they think I should be reading, putting me into another echo chamber through certain filter bubbles. So what is it that we as public need? What are the safeguards that's needed when we're talking about AI in newsroom? Any thoughts? Yeah.
The world of
Anyone? I mean, I'll open it up to the panelists first, but please feel free, everyone.
Well, it's interesting, this, and very true about media companies having to revolutionize. But I think whatever technology you're bringing, however you want to revolutionize it, you have to think in terms of your audience, the people who you want to buy your newspapers, buy your online news, and so on and so forth. And right now, it would seem, just as documentaries suffered years ago and virtually died, yeah, right now, news doesn't seem to be very interesting for a lot of people. The studies that we are doing, for example, with the Oxford group, indicate that for many countries, there is this kind of news kind of rejection, not wanting to listen to the news, as it were. So I think in this kind of context, we have to look at the audience. We have to look at the consumers, as it were. We have to look at the media audience and how perhaps there is a need to make them more media literate, greater media education, teach our students the significance of the media, as it were, or the old media and the new media for understanding the world, right? Much of what media produces now, if you look at the stuff that Fox TV does, it's just trash, right? And it's just that kind of stuff. That there's much more that's there, that was there, that can still be there, which I feel audiences are not aware of. Yeah, so there is a need then to essentially conscientize them, it may use that Freudian word, to make them more aware of the possibilities for their so-called liberation, as it were, yeah, if they demanded certain things from the media. So I think sometimes the media cannot just follow the trend, as it were, by certain groups. Yeah, I think it has to think more long-term, and there is a need, like Ashwad says, for collaboration then, for the media to look at research into audiences, for example, which they might not be able to do, but other institutions like universities may be able to do, to look at what really needs to be done for the medium to long-term future.
If I would like to add what Prof has said, speaking from, we are also part of socialization process. Besides we are journalists, at the same time we are also public. The concern is more on trust and the level of distrust and discontent, not just towards the politicians, and of course we realize no wonder politicians are the least trusted jobs in Malaysia. Look at the problems just now, right? And on top of that, it's about the distrust horizontally within society, and the underlying or the undercurrent that's happening now is AI is coming in, or generative AI is coming in. While we are battling, with misinformation, fake news, and that's going to add more spices to the current fire of distrust and discontent. I think this is where it's important for us to actually come together, partner up, and what we had, for example, for the past 2 years, the realization within the media industry, even like FMT and Astro AWANI, certain areas that we collaborate, and from there you want to rebuild trust. Again, it goes back to the core fundamental word here is trust. Sometimes wonder whether we are rebuilding trust or we are managing distrust. And this is the best part. It is not just within, just within one particular industry, but it has come together a multiple dimensional industries, sectors together that we must close the gap between the world of academia, not just within the professors, but also the students, so that they we can actually start to think about and work backwards. We have to approach this in terms of what can, usually journalists have this, for students, if you think that, can you be a good journalist? Journalists possess good nose. They can smell what's coming. Excuse me. What's coming in the next 5 to 10 years, or in what's coming in the next 1 year. Then we start to work backwards and how to build this trust and start to close the gap. And there will be a lot of campaigns. And I think that is important. Public, from the second part of it, which is from public consumption pattern, or the media consumption pattern, whereby the future is about serving your interests. And what we have seen so far, the algorithm decides what you're going to consume online. With that, that shows that what's coming is everything becoming more and more niche. Say, for example, we have seen before, like I pick one, Paul Tan. hit on one particular area of automotive, and that's it. I just want to win this area. You cannot win all. And I think from sustainability perspective of growing business, we have to choose. Hence, I think one of the best solution that we can actually explore for students to think about what area that you really want to champion and how do you want the brand to be remembered later on. And you work on that particular niche area, and big brands like the old traditional brand, like for example AWANI, the news channel so-called, don't have to hire a reporter. Instead, we partner up together and you build that as your own business. And that is pretty much better because you can actually grow together rather than working as a normal, straightforward, or after universities, I need to work with Astro AWANI. But instead, I'm the partner of Astro AWANI, and I'm going to champion in the beat of, under the pretext of, say, foreign policy. My focus, for example, me and my team, 5 people, we want to partner with Astro AWANI. Astro AWANI don't have to hire or develop the foreign policy desk. Instead, this is a provider. So big brands will be the aggregator. So yeah, for example, like FMT, so at the end of the day, decided to stay on politics and business. That's it. So we partner up together. I have to create political desk. We just work with FMT, for example. We can cushion that impact. Yeah, I think that's my view.
I recall you saying this 2 years ago, Ashwad. I think we should really have another session about rethinking business models and a whole conversation about that. Yeah.
But I think we mustn't forget the elephant in the room, and that is the state. And that is, in Malaysia's case, for example, when you have the state imposing certain values, providing censorship of creative media products like Mentega Terbang, for example, it puts people off, essentially. If the state controls the news, that's another reason that people reject the news, as it were, and then don't want to have anything with the news at all. The question of trust. So the question of trust isn't just journalists, isn't just journalism, isn't just media organizations. The question of trust is the wider environment, where if there's so much control, in so many different forms, legal, political, economic, where they buy up media organizations, then you're going to have a situation where that environment is going to be so unpopular in many ways, right? And people will look for pep rather than look for news in many ways, So all go for the big guns, the big guys, the 90%, 80%, Google News and so on and so forth. So local industries will suffer. So I think we have to look at the linkages between all of this, and at the core of it all, essentially, the question of political economy. It's crucial, I think. Right? No matter how much you want to improve, no matter how much you want to produce, if those restrictions are there, you're not going to go very far, I feel.
I think we would bring this session to a close. It's really critical conversation, and I think it's the beginning. And I really appreciate Astro AWANI, Nottingham, and bringing us together here today, and starting these conversations. And I'm hoping that this conversation is also going to take us into a more responsible way of adapting to these new changes as we navigate, and push for media freedom. I do still think Media Council will happen. Hopefully, it will happen in a way that we want it to happen. Otherwise, I'd rather it doesn't happen. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.